well, let's push some pieces around. See how this works out. Um, One of the problems for me with this is I'm not quite sure what's going to work and what's not. Is it good to have two units in one space? That seems like a way to like weaken your line more. And then also, can I kind of effectuate the counter march across the line that Alexander historically supposedly performed in the pinning down and destroying one flank, basically? I don't know. I don't know if I'm clever enough to really attempt something of that nature. But I will certainly try to concentrate better forces against. We'll go for the Persian left just because that's the more historical, attempt. Um, but I don't know how it's going to work out. I'm really bad at doing echelons, so I end up with kind of a vaguely skewed line because I slowed up the left flank a little bit. But yeah, I'm pulling the baggage train back, trying to get it out of the way. It doesn't really serve any purpose. Pulling these guards forward, and they might potentially prevent some kind of raid back here. But this rough terrain, to me, means it's going to be pretty tough to get to. And I can always use more units. That's not a bad unit, Tried to set it up so that there aren't a lot of places where the Persians can launch an attack. That's useful. However, that Persian left flank cav, which is somewhat potent, could actually come forward and do some damage, which, I mean, somebody's got to attack, right? With the heavy infantry for the Persians in the center, kind of pushing both wings forward, a charge over here positioning myself. This is the weaker flank for Alexander. I want to bust through that shit. Use his own little tricky tactics against him. However, we have, and there's no way to motion charges except like this, or to use some kind of marker. There's some blank counters, but there's basically nothing built into the game that is meant to represent charges, nor locked in melee, that kind of information. I might have to make little scraps of paper or something to handle it. Now, what we've got going on at this point is the defensive fire phase. And I don't see any archers within range of any of the Persians. So there's not going to be any defensive fire. So now I get to calculate out some of my attacks. And I've got, these extra archers back here that can help me. So here I can get an 8-4, which will be a 2-1 attack. Let's just do that and see how as a friend of mine once put it, test out the combat system. Okay, so we've got an attacker morale of 1. Our armies are healthy and happy, and our odds on that are going to be 2-1. And the defender morale is a 1, so we're rolling a die along this top side here. And we get a 3. That's going to be an M, which is a melee. That means these guys are locked into combat. The Macedonians are going to have to attack there again. I don't have an easy answer to represent this other than leave it as it is. Ooh, shit. I forgot about the charge bonus. That's double, isn't it? So my archers actually weren't necessary for that 2-1, and I wasn't going to get 3-1 off of it, so I won't fire them in there. Let's see what we got here. Halved if they attack missile units. No, that's not it. Cavalry charge, you remove 1 or more hexes, their attack factor is doubled. And I used the advanced rules for charge, so, they were a little bit more restricted. So, yeah, here we had 10. Oh, I've got 3 archers here. So 10, 13. We'll do a 3-1 attack instead. So we go to here, 3. That's going to be an exchange instead, which means I think I have to lose something. The only thing I can lose is this. And if I take a step loss on that, That would be 2 hits. Yeah, you got to flip the counters to see how much for 2 hits. Let me make sure that I do actually have to take some losses on an exchange. The way this is worded is, again, ambiguous, no big shock here. The attacker has the choice of eliminating any number of his factors involved in an attack. I would say 0 is a number, but it says, i.e. 1 or 2 steps from 1 or more units. I think I have to take at least a step loss. Otherwise, the combat system is going to be relatively unbloody. So instead of a melee result, we got this. And we'll put him back in the center of the hex so that we know that there's no effects in play there. Now over here, I only used 1 of these. That means I have 2 of these, so I have 10, 16 to 3. That gives me 5 to 1. Ouch. And on a 3, that's going to be a defender back 2. So he falls back 2 spaces. And let me check the rules. I gotta say the victorious units may advance, but I'm not at all convinced that I want to advance. So I'm gonna sink back there. I don't want to break my line up. There's no requirement to advance, so I just pushed him back. He'll be able to come back into play. What did we have? We had a couple of step losses. Let's see what we got here. Units or factors eliminate all that. Oh God, I can't understand this shit. Maybe if I get used to where it is here, it'll start making some sense. Loss of less than 3, so that's -1 point, and elimination of 3 or less. Jesus, these are just different. I don't even get this. Okay, so this is a fucking example, so let's ignore this, even though it's got bold print in there. Elimination of less than 3 enemy combat factors from 1 unit is a ½ point, and loss of less than 3 is -1 point. So both lost a point. So we get their morales at -1, and then they gained a ½ point. Crap. Okay, this is how it is. These counters, their facing determines the halfway point on there. So we each lost a point, and then we gained a ½ point. So we're both facing down like that. However, getting pushed back doesn't affect anything as far as I know. This is a game where you want to surround pieces in order to destroy them. Smacking into them face straight up like this doesn't do much, but, you know, I'm presenting a fairly solid front, so I may not be doing stupid things with the Persians, one hopes. What happens in both cases is we lose ½ a point of morale. So these both swing around, and we're at the start of a new turn. So these suckers go back here, and we'll be back to figuring out what the Macedonians have done. And we got to try some stuff out. I wish I had never read "This is a chess-like game," because I would rather blunder through it without that thinking. Now I feel like, I've got to play it like, you know, all these other goddamn Avalon classics where I have to, and honestly, you know, also the stuff from like the Napoleon at Waterloo system, where you have to do lots of counting and thinking and everything. I don't really like to play that way, but we'll see how I turn it out. Yeah. So I'm about ready to start the Macedonian second turn, and I'm going to go over some of what's kind of annoying me with this system and why I think it ended up getting a low rating from me, because it is kind of a headache. So I look at a piece like this, which should be pretty easy to kill. We're not locked in melee, so I can swap units around, and I can get this guy here to attack, and that's a 9 to 3. It sounds like 3 to 1, but if that's all I was doing, there's 6 more archers backing him up in defense, that if I don't fire them during defensive fire, at least how I'm interpreting this, they're going to drop that to a 1-to-1 attack. So basically, there's two factors in here. One is this is kind of a little bit more complicated than, say, the SPI quads, the Napoleon at Waterloo type system, for example, where, yeah, artillery could be used on attack, but it can't be used on defense. It causes a little bit more headache that way. And on top of that, because of, these are very difficult to read. The unit types, they don't jump out at you the way the Redmond Simonson designed counters really do, from about the same era. So it's just a couple of things to look at. I've got a little bit more headache going on. Just wanted to point that out. What I want to point out is, for example, these companions here. You'd think, well, I'm just one hex away, I can't charge. No, I can kind of spin around, run back, and then come in for a charge. Not that that is at all unreasonable, but it's, again, the kind of thing that you got to kind of keep in mind. And then there's all this number crunching and factor manipulation in it. One of the things I'm able to do is take one of those archers out of the way, but there's still a couple of them back here. I'm also able to charge, and you can see I represented that. Again, these are companion cavalry. They can swing around for one movement point, move back, and then come charging back in. However, now it's time for the Persians to start figuring out their archer values. And I don't think I have anything over here that I have to worry about. But as I get here, I think I have just two archers that I can play with. Now, chances are that I'm better off using them to try to defend one of my units rather than launch, you know, a 6 to 9 attack or something like that. So that's what I'm going to do here. I also have to keep an eye out, what do we have for archers here, and I've got a lot of Macedonian archers, some of which are able to support attacks that are going elsewhere. So I'll pass on all the Persian archers, but here I have like 9 to 4. I could get a 2 to 1 on that. Now, I could throw this archer in defense, you know, and now I've got to kind of keep track of all that. So 9 to 4, I can make that 9 to 7, but it's only saving a chariot. Chariots have their issues in this game. I might be willing to sacrifice that, but let's compare all the other factor attacks that I'm looking at. 18 to 9 is really the best I can do on either of these, which is going to get me down to a 2 to 1 anyway. So I'm going to let this go. I'm going to let this 9 to 4, 2 to 1 attack go. And our morale's still good on both sides. Oh, I probably ought to do something with Alexander. I'm going to throw him back on his phalanx. That's probably not going to get killed. Conceptually, it might make more sense for me to flee back there. You don't really want to be in the front lines with your leaders. Likewise, we'll get him back there. They don't add that much. The big thing that, well, they give you dice. Okay. But, yeah, you know what? I'll keep my leaders in the front. The reason being, those extra dice mean that I'm less likely to lose the unit, and that's probably better. Okay, so we had a 2 to 1 coming here. And we do a quick roll. 3, 1, 2, 3. That's going to be an M, which is a melee. So now I'm going to mark the engagement this way. Don't have to really worry, that's not a charge. The attack here, this is the one I'm going to throw my archers in. Maybe. Let's see. 18, that could be 18 to 9. But I have to throw, let's see, this archer went in there. I have to throw some of these archers in because these two can only fire at this. So we're looking at 8, and 18 is 26. Now 26 to 9 is only 2 to 1. So we'll let him do that. Oh, no. Yeah, we'll throw our archers into that, right? 26 to 6 would be ugly. So yeah, we'll do the 2 to 1 on that. 2 to 1. with a 3 is another melee, so we'll leave him in his space here. And then this is going to be 18 and 4 is 22, but that's only to 3. I've got no extra archers to go in there, so that's 7 to 1. I believe that's an automatic elimination. I have the option to advance. I am going to take it. There's some danger of a flank attack there, which would be unpleasant. But this guy's at some risk. Not much. He's covering that. He's covering that. Let me just see. If I expose, yeah, this is where the game gets, if I expose this space, that's not really a danger to him. So I'm going to leave him back because he could be flank attacked if he does move forward. We had a kill. I got to figure out the points for that. It's, I think, 1 point loss, if I recall correctly, for the Persians, and a half point gain for the Macedonians. Do a quick check there. Yeah, because it's less than 3 factors. Oh no, it is 3 factors. 3 factors or more. I'm sorry, it's a 1.5 point loss. Yes, this is a painful system. And a full point gain. There. And that should be that. That puts us over to the Persian side, and I can bag that unit. The real thing to look at, though, is, you know, for the kind, we'll see how historically accurate this all boils out. But for the kind of historicity that I think this game provides, I think it's less than something like GBOH. But man, the system is more complex than the GBOH system, you know, and it's not giving anywhere near the same kind of range of elements. It doesn't have, you know, all the interesting sort of pulsing of movement that you might have your objections to, but at least to some extent covers, you know, some of the uncertainty of command and control in a battle. It doesn't have anything like the comparison of different weapons types. I remember somebody making a note, oh, this does do that. I don't see it. This has strength factors, you know. There's no, oh, look, you know, the elephant is going to scare the cavalry and stuff like that. This has at least as many special rules as a GBOH battle would. And remember, I mean, this is focused on one battle. And I don't think you get as much bang for your buck out of it. You know, if you want something of this level, especially this level of, and here's the other thing, there's this heavy thinking about, you know, your positioning of units and everything to such a degree that, yes, I know in this era that was pleasing to a lot of people, I think, the chess-like feel of like the geometry and everything. But to me, that's just sort of a headache, you know. It's like Feudal, the game Feudal, which is basically chess, you know, with you can move all your pieces at once, and I go, you go type format. It just generates this huge headache of, well, what am I trading off here, here, and here for here, here, and here potentially? And it just takes chess to another, you know, it's like playing a multi-dimensional chess or something like that. It's just kind of irritating to me. You know, it's leaving that at that pure thought level, but, and this doesn't, it's got the die rolls, but still, it just doesn't mesh well with my style of play, and not with whatever my style of play was. Maybe if I had picked this up at 11, and, you know, where I just did not have the discipline to realize that, yeah, I could think harder about this. Of course, I'd get even more rules wrong then. All right, on to the Persians. Started the Persian move, and I started over here on their right flank, launching some charges. I thought I had a charge here, but nah, these are slow pexes. My brain does not recognize that very easily, so I'm gonna have to launch, you know, more value into there, and I can probably get at least a 3 to 1. I put a leader in for the extra die roll. But now, there's sort of this desire, well, do I want to just charge forward? But I don't know the answer to that. So now I'm going to have to go over to the other side of the battle and see how that kind of develops and what that's going to cause in terms of, pushing across here. Hey, what are these guys going to cause me to do? What kind of decisions do I make locally over there? And then I come back here and try to figure out what I'm actually going to get out of it. I may be misplaying some things. I'm not sure about that. For example, I don't think that I can have 2 units from one hex attack into another hex. So that's kind of those kind of misplays may be causing me more headache than otherwise. Maybe I could just count it as stacking as I would in other games. It doesn't seem like the rules are written that way, however. I've fleshed out most of what I'm doing over on the left flank. Now it's time, and the center for that matter, it's time for me to go back to the right flank and figure out where those units go. I gotta be careful because the cav charges are so potent, doubling the strength. So like, it might be worth charging this thing and getting a 1-to-1 against it, instead of giving it the option to charge. This is a situation that actually is analogous to a lot of games that have cav or that have some kind of benefit to that first attack, or people kind of, the hoplites tended to do this. Hey, no big shock. Where there was an advantage to charging forward. But these aren't the hoplites that are getting this advantage. This is the cav that's getting it. And I don't mind cav charges being advantageous, but the thing is, there's no counter charge. There's no concept of that in this. And that may make sense given the era and the weaponry that they're using. That I'm not really sure that a cav charge has the kind of impact that it's showing here. But then again, I'm also not sure that it doesn't, in the sense that the valuations are hard to justify one way or another. We'll see. These are pretty good units for their time. You're talking about, the companion cav was definitely, absolutely very, very powerful. And the Persian heavy cavalry, was renowned at the time. So probably the best part of their army for the most part. Certainly the best other than the Greeks, the mercenary infantry. And after a whole lot of thought, this is what I've ended up with. All right, I'm going to start from this end, and because this gets sort of gnarly, and I kind of don't want to do it on camera, so I'm going to head over here where there aren't a lot of archers. Basically, there are no archers for the Macedonians, and there's 1 for the Persians. That's about the level I can handle with those and do things on camera easily. Okay, we still have full morale values. We haven't, really been in battle yet. So I wanted to launch this attack here, and one of the reasons is because I have a leader there. So this is not charging cav because it's in the slope. And I've got 8 strength points. What? Okay, if you're on slope or high ground, there's no effect because I'm also on the slope. Actually, I'm on a hill above that, but that doesn't really affect things. Okay, so what did we say? 8-3. That's going to be 2-1. I'm not throwing my archer in here, but I get to roll. Shit. I'm going to need more dice actually, but 2 dice, and we said 2-1, and I get to choose. Well, 6 is probably pretty bad. But 2 is an exchange. So I have a choice between an attacker back 2 or an exchange. For my exchange, I can kill both these units. Let me immediately have to take a quick look. We're looking 3 factors or more. That's 1.5 to 1. So each one takes -1.5 and +1. So each loses a half point. Now, for the Macedonians, that kicks them there. This is -1.5. That kicks them to -2. And these will be then bagged, but I'll keep going. I can advance. I will do so. Nothing like a leader loss check or anything like that. And we're on the stupid mounted map problem. This next one. Well, there are special rules about chariots beyond just being Oh, I hope I didn't do a combined arms attack there. No. Okay. I seem to remember there's a special rule for the chariot charges. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so when chariots attack, only against phalanxes do they ever have to check. Okay, there aren't a lot of phalanxes, I don't think. I'm not sure what comprises them. It may just be these two units. Well, these are veteran Macedon mercenaries now. There should not be phalanxes. Let me check and see. It may be that all the Class A units count as phalanxes improperly because these are really hoplite units. So it has to do with all these little markings on the top there, the little spear marks or whatever. Those are what make something considered a phalanx in this game, even if it's not a phalanx. So we can go to the next battle. That's 8-2, 4-1. There's nothing can be done about this. Half defender eliminated. That's just a step loss. And that's going to be a half point for the Persians and a whole point lost from the Macedonians, which puts them down to -5 with no gain, and it's not in a locked-in melee. The next one here is 12-3. That's a 4-1. The Persians have some capability in this game. There's no question. And we get a 5. And that's going to be a half defender eliminated. That's pretty good too. And that'll also be a less than 1 or less than 3. So -1.5. We go down to there. And these are up to there. And so on. Bum away just because there's a certain tediousness to just rolling out these combats. We do have a couple interesting things, though, like elephants attacking here. If something neat happens there, we'll talk about it. I think I screwed up. I think I used these as archers. They look like they have a little archer symbol. That's actually... Not surprised I screwed up. That's actually, I think, the mercenary infantry symbol. I forgot about this. There are special rules for mercenaries if we surround them and everything. Surrounding units isn't easy, though, when the lines are fairly sturdy. You don't want things to turn into chaos on your side, I can tell you that much. So, yeah, I was looking at this attack because I can get like a 1-to-1 on here. Not quite. No. I have 5, 6, 7, 8 maximum to 9. This guy unfortunately couldn't throw himself in. He had to go over here. So that's not going to help. So what about, and note that, this is here, even though I have to notate him like this. Otherwise, I won't ever remember that they're locked in combat. But that means I have only 5, 8 at most. So I'm looking at a 1-to-2 no matter what, which means I don't have to throw this in. But there's not much he can do of any value. Because he can hit this one, so we'll hold off on dispositioning him as well. So yeah, we're looking at 1-to-2 there, which isn't good, but we were forced into it with the melee result. And that's going to be an attacker back 1. Okay, I don't know if I can retreat there. It's not directly back, you're allowed to, and directly back is kind of here anyway, but whatever. Okay, and that gets me this last one where I have 7-5, which at least gets me down to the 1-to-1 table. Where I get a half attacker eliminated, which is not at all good. So that is a half point for the Macedonians and a point loss for the Persians. And That gets us to the end of this round. You can see, you know, there are places like here where I didn't launch a flank attack because I don't want to expose my own flank. I don't want to get, you know, smashed up to bits. The Macedonians got a little bit of a cheat here where they got a little bit extra archer power on their first attack. We won't make that mistake again. There's a pinned in battle over here. And now we check this out. And it looks like Macedonians are down 3, which puts them to 16.5. And the Persians are down 2.5, which puts them to 17. And we'll pull these back off so that I can pay attention. And that gets us to the next turn over on the Macedonian side. And it's not too bad yet. I don't know how much worse it gets. I think maybe I was more frustrated last time, not as willing to, you know, just say screw it. I'm just going to play it as best as I can in terms of trying to understand what the rules are and not care too much about what happens. Probably was looking for more out of this than, you know, now I expect. But yeah, it's not feeling that painful to me so far, which is kind of a cool thing. Yes, this is a little fiddly, and yes, it's hard to read the counters, and there's some little things that it's not that bad. It's not much worse than Great Battles of History. All right, but I do need to take breaks. Unlike, you know, back in I guess sort of the golden era of my videos, they were less steady, but. Back when I was better at doing these, and you know, I would sit down and I would just play a GBOH, and I would run through a game in the course of a day, and something this size would probably take me a day or two. Honestly, work is becoming a harder burden, as is the house, but also on top of that, I'm just having a hard as hell time bringing myself to actually just play out turns of things, no matter what they are. Anyway, I'm really having trouble here. This is a mercenary infantry. It's got the X, it's got a little doot underneath it. These guys are not that same symbol. Their symbol is actually not even represented here. I don't know if they're like mercenary archers or if that black bar means nothing, they're just archers, or what. But they're actually not even represented in my options here. So I'm really not sure how I should be portraying them. They look and act a lot like these guys who are archers in a lot of ways. So I'm going to treat them as if they're mercenaries and archers at the same time, which means I kind of cheated with them. I cheated against them on last turn because or at least on the Persian attacks or whatever, which, you know, is weird because I'd like there to be a lot less archers in this game. They're such a headache. I've moved some of my units, started refusing this flank, but yeah, I'm having trouble figuring out what the hell units are. This would be a mercenary infantry, so that's okay. And I'm trying to cluster and get heavier attacks against units because I'm having a lot of trouble you know, breaking the line. Now, what I feel is more sort of reasonable for phalanx warfare is not to say, oh yeah, this unit, this unit, this unit will pick on that unit. Now, he is a little exposed, so maybe that's the case. But this guy is a lot less exposed if this piece of the line was also held, yet the same kind of attack could be done on him, and I don't like that. But what I really don't like is over here where I'm trying to calculate out, you know, the effects of these, the potential effects of all these fucking archers on the board. The fact is the Macedonians aren't doing too badly here. They came out ahead in morale in the fighting due to the kills that they got. Throwing a leader in gave them extra dice, which was useful. Extra die. It made it so that they didn't have to lose something major or something not that major for no purpose. They got flung back here though, and things are looking kind of bad on that side. I don't feel very comfortable with the Macedonian position, to be honest. I feel more comfortable with the Persian position. Of course, now that the Macedonians have a lot more archers here again, it looks a lot better for them. But the archers are a pain in the ass, and I gotta tell you, it's not just the, oh, they could interfere in any combat, basically, but also that you have to make this decision of when they interfere after the defensive fire. Well, before you make the defensive fire. So before any of your opposing units are committed, you have to try to guess what your opponent is going to use their archers for. I really hate that kind of thinking. If there were just a couple pieces on the map, it wouldn't be a fun game, but it wouldn't be painful. This is painful. I'm not saying I don't enjoy it at all. It's just there are better mechanisms out there that, you know, play better for me. Got the Persians making really a pretty massive strike back. Of course, moving my pieces isn't enough. Now I have to figure out what the effect of all this is in terms of, you know, I tried to calculate it out so that the archers aren't going to be able to do much, but you can't really be sure. One of the things I did try to do to negate the archers is attacking them directly, because that takes at least some of them out of the equation. And they're just so obnoxious, but they're also powerful, and therefore you want to reduce your enemy's chance of using them. So if I can knock some of the Macedonian archers out. To be honest, the attack that's going on along here looks very promising. It looks to me like the Persians have a good chance of sweeping around behind the Macedonian army, and that's going to cause a whole hell of a lot of problems. I haven't been playing for very much, in part because I started watching a lot of stuff, a lot of discussions on biblical stuff, really, which, I don't know, it just, I'm very easily attracted to things and start paying attention to them. But now I have got something that's a Kickstarter preview that I've got to do. So since that came in the mail, I'm like, well, I better get this out of the way so I can start playing that. And I think I've busted into everything. You can see a lot of units are stuck in this kind of engaged circumstance. Some of these are multi-unit battles, which may not be able to maintain themselves as multi-unit battles at the end of this. Let me see what we're talking about. This doesn't look right. This was hitting both of these. I don't know what the hell happened. I think I cheated. Wouldn't surprise me, because the mess starts getting so complicated that it's just really hard to keep track of. It looks like I cheated there. I think I did this as a multi-hex battle, and honestly, this unit would have to attack that, this unit would have to attack that, and then this would have gotten the shit kicked out of it. But instead, by massing them all together, it was a 1-to-1, and it's just all wrong. We each lose 3 morale, though, which changes things a little bit, because now both sides are down to I really should have those consistent. Each side are both down to a 2 morale, which means now we're going to be playing on this table, but more than that, we're going to be rolling on the second row of each of the results on that table. Obviously, your combat results can start getting better if you start actually winning fights, but that's not really happening. We had some interesting trade-offs here. Like I had to lose a good, I don't know, an overly good, I think this thing, Persian cav, to make sure I didn't lose too much morale in killing off an archer unit. You know, the alternative would have been bunk bunk, where I lose some morale comparatively, and I'm not really sure a 3-point cav is that valuable. Cav is very good too. I mean, archers and cav are both very strong. The infantry, where's the infantry strong? Most of it's not. The phalanx and hoplite units are, just because they're so big. But the other units on the board, largely you don't really need them. You know, they're kind of clutter, but they're clutter that helps you keep your line secure, etc. The reason that the cav, the chariots even, believe it or not, the elephants, the reason those are strong is they have the charge capability, so they can double their strength if you can line up and attack. Usually I can. There were a couple of cases where I was attacking with cav where it couldn't charge because it had to rotate. It had to do a facing change just as it was going into battle, basically. But normally you can launch a charge against things with the cav, which is what's happening over here. The Persians are really winning on that flank. The weight of the Macedonian heavy infantry, that's going to be painful when it hits. And when there's like these continual M results, the melees or whatever, they kind of stick the cav to you, so they're not going to run away and get out of there. So that, you know, is one of the defenses against them. If you can hit the cav before it hits you, you'll never have to face its double rating until it breaks its way free. All right, so now we're making an attempt to try to prevent this flank from getting too ugly. I haven't moved this guy. Let's see. That's 2. Yeah, he can't get out of there easily. However, I could charge here, which is definitely not optimal. It's leaving a hole in my line. I've got, I think those are mercenary cav, maybe not. Let's see what the little symbol says. Yeah, so those could surrender if things go very badly here. Not this turn, but on the Persian turn. On the other hand, I'm trying to do quite a bit over here. I'm bringing the phalanx and the hoplites into play. They're the meat of my order. We'll see if they're able to break their way through the Persian line in the center. That could change this, but it would still be very much in doubt. Right now it looks like a very solid Persian position, though. I don't think the results are good enough for the Macedonians to be happy. They took some damage on some of their big units, which is bad, because although they didn't lose as many units overall, their morale ratings end up taking the hits there. And they're just not getting the kind of traction here that they need to make up for what they're losing up here. And now the Persians get to come swinging back. Well, fighting on the Persian left and center is still up in the air, and I would give the edge to the Macedonians in the center still because of those heavy units. Yeah, we're not fighting those heavy units for the most part. Just trying to fill gaps in so that we can delay them a little bit. Up here on the Persian right, man, that whole Macedonian line is just collapsing there. And that's going to cause a lot of problems as this cav can get around. And the breakthrough here was not as impressive as I hoped. It's still pretty massive. Attacks over here were successful, but they're leaving the Persians in a little bit of a disorganized state. We might start seeing some kind of wild stuff. The only reason we won't is the restrictions. These things are just too slow. So this would be like 1, 2, 3. He could get in there, but he'd be facing the front of a unit instead of the flank. However, there is a flank maybe exposed here. You know, there's stuff going on where there might be some chances of getting stuff. Over here, though, things didn't go quite as well for the Persians, as expected, right? You know, this is where the brunt of the attack has been. But the net effect on the morale is ugly. So the Persians lose 1 morale, okay. But the Macedonians just lost 13.5, which I think just destroyed them. They only had 12.5. So they have just lost the battle due to morale losses, actually, which kind of makes sense. I mean, they're broken here. And that's the end of it. And it really wasn't that long, you know. I kind of expected this to play out longer than it did. I didn't realize how quickly the morale was going to just add up there. But I think that just ended it. Let me make sure I'm right. I'm not sure where to find the victory conditions. Yep, Macedonian morale down to 0. So that's the game. And, I mean, it clearly looks like the Macedonian line collapsed there. But that's something you got to keep in mind is you can't sacrifice a big chunk of your army in the hopes of maybe winning on a different side. I'm not quite sure what to do better in this game. I felt like the mechanisms of it made it more difficult for me to kind of visualize what's going on and thus come up with good strategies. It's too much about the number counting for my sense. But anyway, there we have it. Clearly it's possible for the Persians to win this one. I've heard other people say that the Macedonians have a huge advantage if they play historically. I probably did not play very historically. I have a hard time doing so in general. I try, but, I have a hard time making the pieces do what they should do especially if I can't visualize what's going on. So, but here, it's a matter of trying to keep a dressed line across the board, which probably doesn't make a lot of sense. But on the other hand, you don't want to expose flanks, I don't think. So like a full echelon move looked too risky to me. So I went with this kind of more solid line that opened up the attacks to the Persians. Did I probably make rules mistakes? Well, I know I made some. I pointed those out. I may have made bigger ones that maybe some of you looking at this playthrough will say, yeah, you totally fucked it up. And I wouldn't be too surprised by that. Kind of glad it's over. Kind of glad it went like that instead of, fighting out a little, just longer and longer, seeing that I'm in this totally losing position with the Macedonians. It's kind of cool to an effect that I don't think about the morale is that it just, boom, the game's over, man. You've lost this battle. Time to set up another one and play it again. Give it another shot, whatever. Not for me, but managed to get something off my list of plays, and now we can move on to the next thing, right? All right, let's send this one up and I'll come back with a review.